Hello and welcome everyone. I'll leave a few seconds for people to join. I know people are joining from the waiting room. This is our weekly platform trial update and Q&A session. And today I'm particularly happy to have a guest speaker, Dr. Su, who's an investigator from Penn State. So if you can go to the next slide, I would like to welcome Dr. Su and ask him to introduce himself and his site.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Su, but call me Bill. Everybody does. I am at Penn State Hershey, and we are kind of in central Pennsylvania in a very small. Hershey is itself a small town, but gets a lot of tourist activity. So Hershey is the Hershey Chocolate Company. So if you like Hershey chocolate, come. Our site has been run by Dr. Simmons since he joined our faculty in the early 90s, slightly before Rohypnol was approved. And our ALS Center was started in collaboration between him and the Greater Philadelphia ALS-A chapter with Sue Walsh. So we've been running that since then. I've been doing research with him since the early 2010s, and I recently just joined as a formal neuromuscular faculty. We have currently four ALS physicians. So if you go to the next slide. So Hershey itself, if you look at the screen in the bottom left, we really have three things in the town. We have the medical center, we have the Hershey Corporation and the chocolate and entertainment things, and then we have the Hershey Milton S. Hershey School for economically disadvantaged children. We also have a lot of land. That's the one thing I'll point out. Compared to Boston, where my family, some of them are, we have a lot of land and free parking. So come down to Hershey if you want free parking. Our ALS clinic, we follow about 220 active patients annually, and then we get 80 to 100 new diagnosed patients annually as well. So right now we've added up to 4 clinicians. I'm not sure if you can, well, I don't think I can control a cursor there. So at the bottom panel there on that group of team members, you see Dr. Simmons on bottom, the second from the left, and then Dr. Brogan, Dr. Maramavati, Dr. Sue Walsh is way on the left, and then we have the whole multidisciplinary team. Way in the back there, you'll see the clinical research coordinators. The photo's not updated, so you don't see everyone there either. So we have 3 ALS nurses, and then all of the ALS clinicians are actually currently sub-Is on HEALEY, and 3 research coordinators, of which 2 are dedicated to HEALEY. So next slide and my last slide. And so our experience with HEALEY has actually been tremendous, both in terms of from the clinicians as well as from the patients. Dr. Simmons shared with me that since he started doing clinical trials over here, this has certainly been our highest enrolling clinical trial. It's the most active one in our research program in our clinical history. The patients that we have, and we have a large catchment area that basically extends almost out to Pittsburgh, almost out to Philadelphia. They are very interested for a number of reasons. I think the 2 ones that we get the most, one is it seems like from everything that they hear, only drugs with the highest chances for benefit seem to be included, and also they are very excited about the placebo to active drug proportion, the 3-to-1 that is currently going on. I think at this point, we actually just got approved for regimen D. So I just want to give that update. And then if you're interested, I didn't include the contacts on this slide, but you can find on the HEALEY website, Heidi is our main contact, and then Michelle, you'll see that on there as well. We've had some challenges along the way, some road bumps. We found that the amount of logistical and documentation coordination has been more than we anticipated. And we're kind of still assessing how many patients each clinical coordinator can be managed. I will have to say personally that the support from central monitors is extremely helpful. I feel like while at this point we haven't had any adverse event or serious adverse event that's led to true patient harm as a result of the study trial. Trial drug, as far as I can tell. I feel like anytime that anything happens and I have a question for Dr. Torti, our safety monitor, our central safety monitor, she's been extremely rapid and provided a lot of support that we felt was very helpful. So we've had a lot of good experience with HEALEY, and we hope to continue as the trial continues. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sue. And it's really great to see how at your site, you have obviously Dr. Simmons, who has been doing trials for many, many years. And now there's 3 of you, if I understand it, more people who joined over the last couple of years or so. And it's wonderful that the site is really scaling up and making sure that they have resources to include more patients. That's really what we like to see, that sites want to continue to create opportunities for patients, and they hire and scale up because of that. So thank you so much for joining and providing your feedback. And the trial is a large scale operation. It's a complex trial because we're testing multiple drugs. At this time, we're testing 4 drugs: zilucoplan, verdiperstat, CNM-Au8, and pridopidine. And the people who complete the placebo-controlled trial, which is 6 months, can go on open-label extension for their regimen. So I'm really happy to share that thanks to the work of sites like Penn State, we really make great progress on enrollment. So if you can go to the next slide. We can share that now we have over 800 people who have signed informed consent, and they are assigned to regimens, and then they are randomized to active or placebo within a regimen. And we already have over 200 people who have completed the placebo-controlled period of the trial and are now on either active or placebo. Now, as you may remember from, I'm sorry, that the ones that were entered the open label extension are now on active. I'm sorry, I misspoke. As you may remember, the target enrollment for each regimen is approximately 160 individuals. And so we're getting to target for really the majority of the regimens. Now we're getting very close for A, B, and C, and we expect that for D also we will make a lot of progress as we complete enrollment in the other regimens. So again, great progress on enrollment, and we keep the community updated on a weekly basis. So we'll continue to share these updates. Next slide. And so this is how to find a center near you. I know that in recent webinars, we have been sharing that new sites are being added. And so now we have a new site that was activated for regimen, the University of Southern California. As discussed, we try to open up to new geographies. Really, we're trying to add sites so that there's more capacity either in new areas or in places where obviously there's larger cities. We add more sites. So if we can go to the next slide, we can share sort of a general map of where the older sites and the new sites are located. I would say that for the new sites, the ones in green, they are being added right now. They're not able to receive participants yet, and so we will work with them. The only one of the new ones that is now active is the University of Southern California, and all the other ones are working hard to be activated so that they can join sort of the older group and start enrolling participants. I also do want to mention, as you can see in the map, the new sites are in different locations, including new states where we didn't have a presence before. Just eyeballing the map, I can see Idaho, Utah, Arkansas. So really great to add new states, as well as add capacity in many of the states where we already had sites before. Indiana also is new state. Next slide. And as always, you can reach out to Catherine and Alison, who are also on the line today with any questions. That's their information on the slide. Next. And we continue to have fantastic guest speakers. And next week, instead of having the site join us, we're very excited to have Dr. Miller from IMALS. She's the Director of Science and Policy. As you know, we have a great collaboration with IMALS, specifically in terms of an expanded access program that we're working on, and we really appreciate their support. So we're really happy that she will join us to tell us more about the great work that IMALS is doing, as well as specifically the EAP that they are helping with. Next slide. Oh, that was the last one. So Thank you so much. As always, we try to keep the slides short. Obviously, when you have academic physicians, you really, we could keep talking for a long time. We need to limit our slides so that we can take your questions. All right.
Thank you. Maybe I'll read the questions out too. There's a lot, but first there's two wonderful comments I just wanted to read. One is a shout out to Heidi Rock. She is amazing. We all agree, but nice to see it in writing. And then another one about the enrollment numbers are incredible. The platform trial has raised the bar for all US ALS clinical trials. Absolutely so proud of this, and thank you for that. So a question, Sabrina, once in the open label extension, are continued visits to the clinics required, and at what rate? I'm on A.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the open label extension, we do have visits sort of similar to the frequency that you have been experiencing at the beginning of the trial in the double blind. And that's because, there's a small percentage of people that previously were on placebo, and so we'll be starting the drug for the first time. And so we do need to ensure that we monitor them to the same extent. And also because, as discussed previously, the open label extension is really an integral part of the trial where we really get very important data, not just in terms of safety, but also efficacy. So it's really a continuation of the program where we really get very important scientific information. And for that, we do need to collect the data. Now, after so the open label extension is long, the first 20 weeks or so, we have those visits, then they become less frequent because again, the first period is really when we want to ensure that we capture the safety, especially for the people who crossed over from placebo. And some of these can be done remotely.
So Dr. Su, someone asked if you could repeat the information about the number of people that you care for in your clinic, and do you have any information about the total number of people with ALS in Pennsylvania?
So for the second question, unfortunately, I don't have an updated number. I will say that we currently are seeing 220 active patients. Generally, our site goes anywhere between 200 to about almost 300, but 300 would be a lot. So it's right now we're kind of on average 220 active, and then we enroll, or I'm sorry, we diagnose about 80 to 100 new patients a year, and that's basically been the trend the past several years.
Sabrina, will Hawaii be added at some point?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for suggesting it. I mean, we did issue a call for sites, well, two calls, the original one and then the second one to add new sites. Obviously, we need a hospital in Hawaii who wants to participate. So we definitely need to reach out. I don't know, Merit, if there is an ALS clinic there actually, and if not, it would be nice to discuss with the local physicians.
Yeah, it's a great idea. A connection with someone in Hawaii, but it's never too late to try to make that. So thank you for that suggestion. There's two questions regarding transferring from one site to the other. So if someone starts the trial one site, can they transfer to a closer site when that site is open? Either of you could answer that.
Yeah, I can start. So if no, the transferring is not allowed because there is a sort of a complex drug delivery and data collection process that it is very hard to switch once you start at one site. However, I do want to mention that there are lots of opportunities for telemedicine. And so if somebody needs to, for example, transfer to a different state for a period of time, that it would be possible to discuss with the original site how to do the visit remotely, so that you can basically stay with the original site, but do the visit from the new location.
Thank you. So there's a comment about the expanded access bill. I'll just say that, thank you, Michelle, that they have 327 sponsors in the House and 38 in the Senate, and they're trying to get to 60 and making great progress. So thank you for that. There's a question about B12 shots, and maybe Sabrina, you can answer this one. Since we allow other standard of care medications, would you consider allowing B12 shots? It's a vitamin, not a drug.
Yeah, so we what we follow as a principle, which is very similar to other trials, is that if a drug or a supplement is being tested in an active clinical trial for ALS or being considered as an investigational product for ALS, then it wouldn't be allowed because it's considered another experimental medication. Now, B12 is in that category if given intramuscularly and at a certain dose. I think the question was also about lower doses for maybe just well-being or general vitamin supplementation. Those would be allowed. Again, it's only disallowed if it's at the doses tested in a different clinical trial, which is not available in the US. It's a different trial.
Yeah, dose and formulation. Yeah. So as part of the HEALEY, I agreed to do the DNA sequencing. Is the DNA sequencing a whole genome or just part?
It's the whole genome. So the consent is for the whole genome.
So someone's asking about when Swedish in Seattle might be open. And maybe I'll answer that. So the new sites, we're hoping to open as many as possible by December. And I don't know where Swedish is on that list. So to open, the sites need to send us some documents for IRB approval and contracting. And we're really, we want all these new sites open, as fast as possible for regimen E. But I don't know where Swedish is on that list right now. But if you come back next week, we'll have that answer. We always try to bring back information when we don't have the answer handy. So there's a question, once I finish my trial, if I decide not to do open label, can I request entering another specific trial? Because since I'm bulbar ALS, it's my understanding that D is specifically focused on bulbar. So I don't know, Dr. Su, if you want to answer about the being able, if you're not doing open label, can you go into another arm?
Yeah, so we definitely do have patients that do decide to do that. So some people have continued on open label. Some people have decided to, at the end of their double-blind portion, to switch over to another arm. And so at least, it's my understanding that certainly that's allowed. At least that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, thank you. And Sabrina, do you want to answer the question about the predopidine regimen D and where it might work?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's an important question. So to clarify, all of the drugs in the platform, including predopidine, are for all forms of ALS. So we don't, the predopidine drug is not just for bulbar ALS, and that's based on the mechanism of action. So the reason it was selected is because there's data on the fact that it could help all forms of ALS. So again, I don't think it's just for one specific type.
Yeah, that's a really key point. Thank you. So, Dr. Su, there's a question about the speech app. Is it still required if you're in open label extension and your voice is 98% gone?
That I actually, I would have to defer to someone else. I don't know much about that, so I'm not going to say something that might be incorrect.
Sure. Sabrina, do you want to answer that?
Yeah. So most open label extensions, I believe most of them don't include the speech app. In any case, I just want to make sure, again, it may vary by regimen. The one thing I want to make sure we address is that if somebody is unable to speak, then they just simply wouldn't do that measure. So in other words, if we keep it in whatever regimen the person is, if the person is unable to do the maneuver, it's not required to do it. You would just skip that.
There's a question about where we are in randomizing. So the question, are we still randomizing to all 4 regimens now that A through C are getting close? Any ETA when it'll just be predopidine? And Sabrina, maybe you want to answer that.
Yeah, sure. So yes, we are getting close to fully enrolled, which is fantastic. We are closely monitoring the data. We don't have an exact date yet because it all depends on, people signing from consent. Then they have to be to screen in, come back, screen for D, and so it's basically a double screening process. So it's very dynamic because it depends on sort of then if effectively those people can all get in. So right now we don't have a specific date. I know it should happen soon, I would say, but we don't have a date.
We'll definitely share it here. We'll you might end up being the first place we announce it. So the question about the next drug, regimen E, which is by Selos, the next phase is an infusion study. Does it require a PICC line?
No, it doesn't. So people can have it via peripheral, like a regular IV. If people do have a PICC line or do have a port, the port can be leveraged. So if they have it already, it's also possible that some people might want to have a line inserted for ease of access. So again, there's different options there. It's not that we mandate one or another type.
And then this question about regimen D, it says they noticed a cancer history exclusion with a note about the prostate. Does a history of prostate cancer exclude someone? Maybe Sabrina, I'll ask you to answer that.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we know that this is not just for regimen D. So for the entire platform trial, we do exclude active cancer with a few exceptions, or history of cancer within the last 3 years with a few exceptions. Now, I would have to look, I can look up right now as we are on the line. I believe the prostate in situ is, I would have to check exactly. So there's a detailed list, but that applies to all regimens.
There's a question about whether all the sites would be open to regimen E, and I can answer that. I'd say the majority. There's going to be a few that for their particular issues at their hospital about giving infusions won't be able to do it, but very few. So the majority of the current sites, and then of course the new sites. So there'll be many sites, and I suspect that that trial will enroll fast soon once it starts enrolling. Maybe both Dr. Su and Dr. Paganoni can answer this other question, which is not so much about the platform trial. Someone saying that they were in both the Neuron or the Brainstorm phase 3 and the accompanied EAP program. They regained function in both, with their breathing going from 64 to 105. Their neurologist was amazed. Some people on a different drug, tofersen, stabilized. What can neurologists do to help us get the FDA to pay attention to reported outcomes from these studies and maybe other studies? I don't know if Dr. Su, you want to give your thoughts on that first, and then Dr. Paganoni.
So, I mean, I know from personal experience that we do follow some people with SOD1 ALS, and so the results of the tofersen trial was very exciting for them. I think the recent change where the open label or no, the expanded access was just open was very promising for people in that situation. So I think it's my understanding now that for tofersen, the intrathecal or the CSF, right? So long as you have the SOD1 mutation, it used to be that you had to have a rapidly progressive variant, but now everyone with the SOD mutation can apply for the open access. So, I think that's quite exciting for people that particular condition in that particular trial.
Yeah, and I would add that I think that what we really need is to do additional analysis of the data and really look at the data carefully and identify, if there are specific groups or subgroups of people that are likely to respond to any drug, really. This applies to all of them. So I think it's, basically need to do more analysis.
There's a question about regimen D. Someone said they're already on week 9 of open label extension. They were told it was only 6 months, while the other ones were 12 months. Maybe Sabrina, you could clarify that, please.
Yeah, no, you're right. That was initially planned that way. So we're working on extending that. So let's be in touch. I know the person who I think asked the question. So this should be extended. Yeah.
Yeah. Initially, the company could only provide 6-month open label, but they have since figured out how to do it for until we have the results, which is fantastic. So that'll all be provided to people. And maybe go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to confirm that, yes, I looked up the protocol to confirm about the prostatic cancer. So if it's in situ, meaning a very small type of prostate cancer, that's okay. So it all depends on the type of prostate cancer. Somebody asked if it was exclusionary or not. Again, there is a detailed list, and if it's prostatic cancer in situ, it's not exclusionary. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure because it's a specific list. Sometimes I don't remember on the spot.
We know your memory is really good. This was a complicated one. So there's a question, maybe we can give a high level answer, but invite biomarker expert to one of these calls to answer this more fully. So given the talk about biomarkers this week with neurofilament light in tofersen and neurofilament light, MCP1 and VEGF in Neurone trial, can you explain to everyone what the significance of each biomarker is for tracking efficacy? And maybe Dr. Su, do you want to maybe talk about neurofilament, and Sabrina, you could talk about the other two?
Sure. So I don't have the updated information from the tofersen, but I understand that from before, it was really Dr. Benatar's group that kind of started and pioneered the neurofilament, but with help from many others. But my understanding with that particular one is it's been shown that people, and so this is people with familial ALS, people with ALS and people who have the gene and are at risk for ALS, but haven't developed symptoms, they have different levels of that in their serum and in the CSF. And it seems to be the case that people who are asymptomatic are at risk, and the general population have similar levels. However, once the symptoms manifest, there's a change in that neurofilament level. That change can actually happen a few months, up to 6 months before. And as symptoms progress, the levels seem to even correlate with the rate of progression. So it seems like that is a very important biomarker that would even be able to identify or even stratify risk for progressing into at least a familial case. And so I guess certainly to have that biomarker and to be able to track or correlate with disease progression, that would be important to track in any kind of clinical trial that tries to correlate biomarkers with certain pharmacodynamics and drug levels, as well as the actual phenotype and disease status of patients.
Thank you. Sabrina?
You raised a great point that there's been a lot of studies suggesting that neurofilament or other biomarkers might correlate with progression or prognosis, etc. Now, the question specifically asked about the use of these biomarkers to track efficacy of the drug. And so while it's sort of, one might speculate that if something is, for example, elevated in ALS or correlates with prognosis, then it could also serve as a marker of efficacy. That's where it gets a little bit more complicated, because we need studies that really prove that to be able to use that marker as a proof of efficacy of the drug. So in other words, a biomarker can be used for different things. For example, to say if somebody has the disease or not, or to track progression, or to predict progression. But then to track response is a different question. And so I think we need more studies to establish that.
Yeah, they're not validated surrogate markers yet, but we're getting there, and we'll definitely should have someone here. Thanks for asking. All right, we're a little past time, but let's do zip answers to these 4 questions. So is, for the open label extensions, are they indefinite?
Yeah.
And then maybe Sabrina, all 4 of them.
We recently changed, I believe, as of today, actually, we rolled out the protocols, yes.
Great. Is Prodopidine already offering EAP?
Very soon. We are really working on the last few items needed for offering that.
In simple terms, can you explain what neurofilament is?
Yeah, it's a protein that's in the motor neurons that when there is a problem with the motor neurons, it leaks out. So for example, if a motor neuron is not working properly, as is in the case in ALS, it will leak out. And so the thought is that the more leakage, the more degeneration of the neuron. And that's how we think it correlates with diagnosis or prognosis. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Su, for all you do for this platform trial and for joining us today. It's a real pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Bye. Bye-bye.